So for this video, we're going to go through each of the red heroes that are currently an artifact, and I'm going to talk about what they're good at, which ones have been seeing play in constructed in the closed beta, as well as maybe mention when you would consider using these in draft and what they're good at in draft. So right out of the gate we have Axe. If you've been following the game at all, waiting for it to come out, you probably know that Axe is one of the best heroes in the game. Axe has 7 attack, 2 armor, and 11 health, and Axe's signature card is Berserker's Call, which we'll talk about in a second. These are premium stats. Axe is a monster on the battlefield. 7 attack is enough to take out a large number of heroes in one hit. 2 armor is fantastic. 2 armor is a sweet spot when it comes to armor. There are a lot of sources of damage in the game that deal 2 or less. So having 2 armor means you're negating all of those. Think about melee creeps. Think about cards like Conflagration. Things like Tower Barrage. Axe can prevent a lot of damage by starting with 2 armor. 11 health is also great. In fact, most cases, anything more than 8 health is phenomenal because there are very, very few heroes in the game that can do that much damage. All of the red heroes are above 8 health, which is like a sweet spot. Well, I'll say effective 8 health. There's 2 that are below, or at or below 8 health, and we'll cover that when we get there. But effective health of 8 health. All the red heroes are great in that regard. And that, again, that's just because there aren't many heroes in the game that start by dealing that much damage. Bristleback does 8, Sorlakan does 8. As we can see, Axe does 7. Phantom Assassin with her ability can do 10. Debbie with her ability can do 9. Legion Commander does 6 but has 2 Retaliate, which will total 8, but because it's Retaliate, that can actually be mitigated pretty easily with armor. And then Bounty Hunter has 7 with a chance to go up to more. But for the most part, a lot of the heroes in the game just don't do, 8 damage. Certainly a bunch of them don't deal 9 or more. So Axe having 11 here is great. Not even counting the armor, there's not a hero in the game that does 11 damage right out of the gate, unless you're playing other cards to buff them up at the time. So he doesn't die in the opening round. He negates a lot of damage by that 2 armor, and the 7 attack is great. He has no activated ability, he has no passive ability, but he doesn't need it with stats like that. Now, Axe has a signature card called Berserker's Call, and this signature card is also great. This is the reason why Axe is one of the best heroes in the game. Berserker's Call is the kind of card that is good in both aggressive decks and in controlling decks. It says choose an allied red hero, so it can be played on Axe or other red heroes that you are running. And that red hero will battle its enemy neighbors. Now, if you do a quick mouse over here, we can see enemy neighbors, if you're not familiar, means the 3 enemy combat positions closest to this unit. So think directly across from the unit, and then on that left and on that right. So depending on how things are positioned, you could have Axe or another red hero battle up to 3 things, kill them all, and that really clears a path for you to deal damage to the enemy tower. So it's great in aggressive decks as a way to kind of clear things out of the way. In controlling decks, this can be used to kill opposing heroes, and when you kill an opposing hero, you potentially shut them out of being able to play cards in that lane. So Berserker's Call is very, very strong because it can be both aggressive and controlling. On a guy like Axe, again, because he starts with 2 armor and may pick up more, and he starts with 11 health and may pick up more, it's okay if you end up battling 3 big units. It could be 3 heroes even. He's likely going to survive unless he's already low on health. Because, for example, that 2 armor negates all melee creeps. You could have a melee creep directly across and on the left and on the right, and Axe could use Berserker's Call, and he could clear them all and take 0 damage. Because the way Berserker's Call works, each one battles, but it's all individual, it's not cumulative. So they'll take 2 damage, take 2 damage, take 2 damage, and then the armor negates all of it. So Axe's stats in combination with his signature card mean that he is a very, very, very strong red hero. Arguably one of the best heroes in the game. I actually think Legion Commander edges him out a little bit as the best red hero, but he's a very close second. Most constructed decks, if you're running red, you're kind of auto-including Axe right now. I could see potentially down the road depending on how the meta evolves, Axe actually not being played in more controlling, more late game focused red decks. I think that a guy like Tidehunter, for example, when we get to there, the signature card that Tidehunter has and his ability to just stick in a lane forever has the potential to be good, but having somebody like Axe in your controlling deck is nice because sometimes it means generating pressure early, which is something control decks typically lack, especially if you pair it with blue, for example. A red-blue control deck benefits from the early presence of Axe. And the signature card, again, it's great for aggressive decks and for control decks. Axe is a premier hero. In draft, you basically, if you see an Axe, you pick an Axe. And if you see a second Axe, you pick a second Axe. You're just basically never upset to see an Axe. So we'll move on. And let's talk about Beastmaster. Beastmaster here has 5 attack, 12 health, no starting armor. But these are still respectable stats. 12 health means you're in the safety zone. You're not going to be one shot by another hero in the opening round if you do choose to play him there. And Beastmaster's 5 attack means that it will still automatically clear out enemy melee creeps. Heroes that have 4 or more attack are pretty important in the game because that means that you're making sure melee creeps that do get matched up across from your hero, they're taken out in one hit, one combat. And not only does that help you keep the lane clear and generate gold for you, but it also means your hero is not taking as much damage in return per melee creep. So helps kind of protect their health total a little bit. Beastmaster, again, fits this mold. Beastmaster has an activated ability, has a 3-round cooldown, and when you use it, you summon a Loyal Beast. Now, a Loyal Beast, if you're wondering, is a 3 attack, 1 armor, 3 health creep. And when it deals damage to a unit, you modify that unit with -1 attack. Now that is modified, so it's permanent. If Loyal Beast hits an enemy hero, for example, they are going to have their attack modified by -1. So this is a pretty powerful creep. It's like the Red Bear, for example, but this one also has 1 armor. And, you know, as far as like just a nice free ability that you're getting on a hero, I think that's pretty solid. In draft, I'm a huge fan of Beastmaster for exactly that reason. Bodies in draft, creeps in draft, anything that helps you generate additional pressure is strong. Some of the best drafts I've ever had were where I had multiples of Beastmaster, because Beastmaster is a strong presence, the active ability is a strong presence, and the signature card has the potential to be really powerful. It also has the potential to do nothing, so we'll talk about that in a moment. But Beastmaster is statistically solid for a common red hero, great active ability. Now, as I said, the 12 health means he survives that first round very easily, but I actually believe he fits best when possible in this round 3 slot, so that you only have to survive 1 round before you can use the active ability. And the 12 health means when he comes down in round 3, it's really easy for him to survive long enough to get that Call of the Wild ability to trigger the following turn. He may be targeted, right? Like he could get hit with a gank or coup de grace, annihilation, things like that. But for the most part, he comes down late, and especially in draft where you're less likely to see those things, right? Like comes down late, you get your active off, and then signature card is Primal Roar. So this costs 7 mana. It's pretty expensive, but has a very powerful effect. Stun a unit blocking an allied red hero, so it doesn't have to be Beastmaster, it can be any allied red hero. And then move that unit's allied neighbors to random other lanes. And this is, in my opinion, the really powerful effect. And also why Primal Roar can sometimes just be a dead card. Because it's based on what is directly across from your red heroes, there is a chance where it's just like creeps across from your red heroes, in which case Primal Roar doesn't necessarily look as attractive as it could. There is a chance that your red heroes are just never aligned for this to be the big blowout that it could be. But when you've got enemy heroes across from your red hero, or as enemy neighbors on the left or the right across from your red hero, Primal Roar can really wreak havoc, especially in draft. So moving your enemy heroes to other lanes has the potential to strand them there. So when you're playing the game, there's typically like a dead lane for each side, right? There's a lane that I'm winning and a lane that my opponent's winning, and we both recognize that, so we're not committing a ton of resources there anymore, right? And then there's like a third contested lane. This is the standard way that games go. I'm not saying every game goes this way. The game is very dynamic, it shifts. But let's say 60-70% of the time it's like this. If you use Primal Roar in the contested lane, you have the potential to send the enemy heroes either into the lane that you're already winning heavily, where they have not invested, and now they're stranded there and they're likely just going to lose those heroes. Or you can send them to the winning lane, where they were already winning and they're not helping contribute by being there. So if your opponent doesn't have a Blink Dagger, if your opponent doesn't have Scroll of Town Portal, or any other movement effects that they can utilize, you can put them drastically behind in the important lane, in the lane of emphasis, if you will, by nailing a Primal Roar. So this card sometimes is dead, and it is certainly expensive, but on pivot turns, on turns where you're trying to like shift things into your favor, turn the tide of the battle, Primal Roar has the potential to be devastating. It has been very good to me in draft. Beastmaster right now, not seeing a lot of play in constructed, just because in constructed play as of right now, red is most commonly a 2-hero color. And what I mean by that is that when you play red, you usually play 2 red heroes and 3 of whatever your other color is. 3 blacks, 3 greens. There is like a 3 red, 2 blue control deck floating around, but Primal Roar and the Beastmaster ability aren't quite enough to crack that lineup. So right now, not a ton of play in constructed, but I love Beastmaster in draft, and he's been very good to me there. So we're going to move on to Bristleback. Bristleback has 8 attack. Again, 8 is a magic number. 8 attack is important because it basically will kill, on the first turn anyway, if you get a good lineup, any blue hero that's not Canna, any black hero that's not Lich, and some green heroes like Rix or Drow. So when we talk about like thresholds and sweet spots for certain abilities, 8 attack is great. And Bristleback obviously starts with that. The 12 health, again, just like with Beastmaster, means that you're safe from dying in the early rounds. Now, Bristleback has a passive ability of Barroom Brawler. Whenever a hero that's blocking Bristleback dies, Bristleback gains 2 armor. It's modified with 2 armor, essentially. So if Bristleback has a hero that's blocking it die, his stats become greater than Axe's. And so like that's the appeal to Bristleback. Now, we all dream of the snowball where Bristleback gets, 2, 3, 4 kills and he's this armored up, unkillable machine. But the truth is, Bristleback is worth your time stat-wise if you can just get 1 kill, because then it's better than Axe stat-wise. Now the problem, though, and the reason that Axe is played far more than Bristleback, is not just because it's conditional and you have to get that kill, but also the signature card. So Axe has Berserker's Call, which is a great signature card. As I said, it's great in aggressive decks, it's great in control decks. Bristleback, however, has Viscous Nasal Goo. Now this isn't bad. Modifies a unit with -2 armor. Keep in mind this is a unit. You can use this on creeps or heroes. The most common use is on heroes because they're going to keep coming back. And anytime you modify something, if you modify a hero, you'll get better long-term value. But this, in many ways, could just read that some unit will take 2 more damage for the rest of the game, right? That's good, right? It's not great, but you gotta make this work for you. And so earlier I'd mentioned there is a red-blue control deck floating around that uses 3 red heroes. Bristleback is the 3rd red hero in that scenario, and that's because they can actually try to make use of the Viscous Nasal Goo. So the way armor works in Artifact, if you have negative armor, then you are taking additional damage equal to your negative armor. It amplifies the damage against you, including piercing damage. So piercing damage will ignore positive armor, right? If somebody has 2 armor and they get hit with Zeus's Thunder God's Wrath, for example, they still take the full 4 damage from Zeus's Thunder God's Wrath because it ignores the 2 armor. If somebody has -2 armor, say they were hit by a Viscous Nasal Goo, wink wink, they would take 6 damage from Thunder God's Wrath. So that's the reason that Bristleback is paired with that red-blue control lineup, is because if you use Viscous Nasal Goo on some of the weaker heroes, or the heroes that don't have armor, you can make your Thunder God's Wraths, your Eclipses, things like that, hit significantly harder. So you can take advantage of this signature card in that scenario, but most of the time, unless you're trying to build around it, most of the time this is just kind of a mediocre card. It's good, not great, and that's why Bristleback just doesn't make the cut in a lot of decks. Bristleback is great in draft still, though. Almost all of the red heroes are really solid in draft, just because the red heroes all have an effective health total for starting the game of 9 or more. And that's really, really good, because as I said before, Debbie against heroes does 9, Phantom Assassin against heroes does 10. Bounty Hunter has the potential to do that much, but outside of those 3, if you've got an effective health of 9 or more starting the game, you're not worried about dying right out in the first round. So Bristleback got that covered. Great in draft, finds some play in constructed, and we'll move on. We'll move on to Centaur Warrunner. 4 attack, 14 health. 4 attack still enough, mind you, to kill melee creeps, so we're solid there. The 14 health, definitely enough to survive the early game. And the passive effect for Centaur Warrunner is that it has +2 Retaliate. So this means that with Retaliate, if we go ahead and we mouse over it here, when attacked during battle, even outside of the combat phase, that means like with Duel or Berserker's Call, you deal this much extra damage to the attackers. Now, it's worth noting, though, that even though it says extra damage, it is a separate damage source. So armor will reduce the attack damage and then the retaliate damage, as opposed to, so like against Axe, for example, this wouldn't do a total of 6 and then get knocked down to 4 because of Axe's 2 armor. Centaur Warrunner would only do 2 damage to Axe because Retaliate gets reduced by 2 and then the attack gets reduced by 2. It is like a double dip, so keep that in mind with Retaliate. But again, still, 4 attack clears melee creeps, Retaliate's a nice bonus, enough health to survive. Centaur Warrunner, I have seen dabbled with in constructed play. So not widely used, but I've seen people experimenting with him, and that's because of the signature card, Double Edge. Give a red hero +8 attack and -8 armor this round. There are 2 reasons you use Double Edge, excuse me. First is in an aggressive red deck where you are trying to burn down the enemy tower. If you have an unblocked red hero and they're out of mana, or you don't think that they're going to respond, you slap down 1 or 2 double edges, 2 especially, right? And suddenly you're dealing a massive amount of damage to the enemy tower, and you can really speed up the clock of the game. That's reason number 1, right? The second reason you use Double Edge is as a tech card against other red heroes. If your opponent is playing red and you have a Centaur Warrunner, you can use Double Edge on the enemy, because it does say give a red hero +8 attack and -8 armor. Now, you might be thinking, why do I want to do this to the enemy hero? Why do I want to make my enemy attack me for 8 more? Well, it's because of the -8 armor. So, let's say an enemy axe has matched up against one of your melee creeps, and you throw a Double Edge on the enemy axe. Axe goes from killing your melee creep and taking no damage because of his 2 armor, to instead still killing your melee creep, because it doesn't matter whether he does, 7 or 15, your melee creep's going to die either way. But because Axe goes down to -6 armor, instead he takes 8 total from your melee creep. So Double Edge, when used on enemy red heroes, can really mess up your opponent's combat math and get some easy kills on what are normally very resilient, very hardy heroes. Red heroes are traditionally tough to kill, and Double Edge has the potential to swing that in your favor. So Centaur Warrunner is worth keeping an eye on in the constructed scene, because if the meta ever shifts to being very heavy red, you could include this as a possible gotcha choice. Centaur Warrunner is also fine in draft if you want to draft him. To be honest, most of the red heroes are really solid in draft. There's only a few that I would routinely pass up. So yeah, Centaur Warrunner. Keith the Bold. Keith the Bold here is the basic hero for red, so it's always available in draft, and it's just a poor man's axe. Like, we'll be honest. 6 attack, 1 armor, 11 health, so similar stats to axe, but not quite as good. No passive, no active ability, just like axe, so not quite as good. Signature card is Fighting Instinct, 5 mana, modify a red hero with +1 attack and +1 armor. This is nowhere near on the level of Berserker's Call in terms of usability or flexibility. A lot of times this ends up even just being a dead card because you usually have just better plays. Like paying 5 to only give yourself like +1/+1, even though it is a modify, the +1/+1 is typically not very effective. So, I mean, Keith is a basic hero. The stats alone make him an okay basic hero. This is still enough in terms of stats to make Keith worth it, mind you, right? But if you can, you want to run other red heroes, obviously. So let's move on to what I think, personally, is the best red hero in the game. Yes, I think Legion Commander is even better than Axe. Legion Commander has 6 attack, 1 armor, and 8 health. So low health for a red hero, but earlier I was talking about like 8 health and an effective health of 9 or more. This is what I mean by effective health. Because of the 1 armor, heroes that are attacking Legion Commander on the first turn essentially have to deal 9 to kill her. And as I said, that's Debbie, that's Phantom Assassin, and maybe Bounty Hunter, depending on his passive trigger. So Legion Commander is still hardy enough to survive most of the early game threats. Legion Commander 6 damage means she's killing melee creeps. The +2 with her Retaliate gets her to the sweet spot of 8 damage against non-armored heroes. So she's got a lot going for her. Again, not the beefiest, but those stats are still good enough. The real value, however, is in Duel. Duel is her signature card, and it is phenomenal. For 2 mana, which is pretty cheap, you choose an allied red hero and another unit, and they battle each other. So, Berserker's Call, like if we go back to Axe real quick, Berserker's Call lets somebody battle all of its enemy neighbors. So it can clear out a swath of stuff, but it's triple the cost at 6, and it's based on position because it's enemy neighbors. However, Legion Commander with Duel gets to choose the unit that you're battling, and that is so important. You can use Duel to snipe an enemy hero later on in the game, especially in like controlling decks or even some more like mid-rangey decks where you're trying to use tempo to your advantage. If you've got initiative in a duel and you can use the duel to kill an enemy hero and prevent your opponent from playing cards in the lane, this is such a powerful ability. And the fact that it costs 2 mana means usually if you do kill that enemy hero and you lock them out of playing things in a lane, you have enough left over to follow up with an additional play. So on that turn 6 where you would play Berserker's Call might get the job done, but if you could still kill the enemy hero with Duel and use your 4 mana left over to develop a creep, develop an improvement, that puts you way ahead on tempo. Duel is fantastic. Also, just note, Duel does say that you choose a unit in battle. There are times where I've used a Duel, for example, to just kill a creep, because maybe a creep is in front of my axe or my other big beefy thing that I want to free up to hit a tower, right? If you're trying to push damage in an aggressive deck, Duel can help do that for you as well. It is just, like Berserker's Call, very versatile, but because it's not position-based, it kind of takes that element of randomness out of it. There are times where your positionings for Berserker's Call just don't work in your favor, and Duel doesn't care, and it's cheap. So, in my opinion, it's close, don't get me wrong. Like, Axe is a phenomenal red hero, but I think that the strength of Duel right now is what makes Legion Commander, in my opinion, the best red hero in the game, and an auto include. Like, I cannot imagine a red deck that doesn't want Legion Commander. It's just that good. Draft, constructed, whatever, Legion Commander is worth it right now. And seeing a lot of play in the closed beta. I should note, I've never seen a constructed deck running red in the closed beta that didn't have Legion Commander, so. We'll move on to Mazzy. Mazzy has low health as well, with 6 health, but Mazzy has 6 attack and 3 armor. So again, an effective health of 9, tied for the lowest of the red heroes with Legion Commander, but that 3 armor is nice. It's a little bit of a diminishing return because really 2 armor is the sweet spot. As I said with Axe, it negates a lot of damage. 3 obviously negates more damage, but there's just, after 2, less and less effects that deal 3 or more. But the 6 attacks is nice because it clears out melee creep still. Mezzy has no passive ability though, no active ability though. And the signature card is neat. It's pretty unique. It's an improvement, and it says your tower has +1 armor. So this is a fantastic stall card. This is a card that you can use to slow down your opponent in a lane that they might be winning. So earlier I had talked about the idea of, you know, you have a lane that you're winning, and typically your opponent has a lane they're winning, and then there's this highly contested third lane. Because this is an improvement and you can play it cross lane, you could throw this into the lane you're losing just to slow them down and help you try to win that race. And if you throw 2 of these there, then it starts to negate all of the damage that melee creeps would do. So there is some benefit to this, but the reason I'm not super sold on it is it doesn't do anything proactive on the board. All this does is slow the pace of the game down for you. So unless you're playing Mazzy in some sort of controlling deck and you compare this with other like removal or board sweeps or something to make the slowing them down worthwhile, or on the other side of the fence, unless you're playing a very aggressive deck and you're using this as a tempo play where you just want to win the race faster, I mean, you got to do something to take advantage of this tower armor. It's a neat effect. It's just not directly impactful on the board. So Mazzy is, you know, okay stats, no passive, no active, and neat, but not the greatest signature card. So in case you haven't kind of got it from my tone, not one of the better red heroes. I'm not going to say I've never played her in draft, but I certainly don't value her very high, and I wouldn't like pick her first in a pack. I don't think she's nearly worth that. In fact, even if I'm a couple picks in, I might still pass her. Definitely not seeing playing constructed right now. So that's Mazzy. Pugna. Pugna's a weird one. 9 health. So again, that like effective health of 9, kind of tied for the lowest there. 6 attack, so it's still clearing out melee creeps. No armor. Has an active ability that's on a 3-round cooldown of condemn a random enemy improvement. Signature card is an improvement itself. After an opponent plays a spell, deal 3 damage to the enemy tower. So here's the thing about Pugna. I don't know what Pugna's trying to do for me. Whenever I look at Pugna's kit, I can't tell if this is supposed to be a controlling card, a tempo card, like an aggressive card. The stats don't say aggressive to me. A 3-round cooldown activated ability doesn't say aggressive to me. And even then, like, it only condemns a random enemy improvement. So it's got to be in a lane where there are improvements, and then you have to hope that they only have one. Otherwise, you have to pray you hit the one you want it to hit. Again, stats don't scream aggressive, but then when I come over to the signature card, this is the sort of thing where I would feel like you would want this in an aggressive deck to either protect your lane that you're trying to pressure in, saying like, hey, I'm going to pressure this and I don't want you to try to interfere, and if you do interfere, I want you to take damage for it. So this is just a really weird kit for me, because another word says to me, I want to put this in a lane where I'm investing to make my opponent not want to play things there. And if I'm playing a slow, dirtling control deck, the 3 damage probably isn't going to be enough to de-incentivize them from playing that anyway, right? Like if I'm playing a slow deck and I'm starting to develop a board in a spot, and then my opponent says, well, like, you know, I can take 8 damage from this, or I can take 3 and still use Annihilation or whatever. I don't know. Another word just feels not worth the investment often to me, and Pugna's kit feels really awkward. So even though Pugna's a rare, I've not seen him personally in constructed decks. I've seen some people share some that had him in it, but I don't know if they were just like memes. But he's not really seen playing constructed right now, and I think I've used him in draft once, just because I don't think I drafted any improvement removal, right? So there is that role. If you don't end up with any improvement removal in your draft deck, maybe Pugna is worth it in your like round 3 slot if you're playing red. But just not seeing a ton of play. Kind of a weird kit right now. And yeah, I'm beating that horse to death. Let's move on to Sven. Sven has 5 attack, 11 health, no armor. So 11 health, hardy enough. 5 attack, still enough to clear melee creeps. The continuous effect, the passive ability that Sven has is Sven has plus X cleave, where X is equal to half of its attack. Now, this rounds down, so Sven starts by dealing 5 damage and then has a cleave of 2. This helps really clear out some melee creeps. I really like Sven in draft. Sven's not seeing a ton of play in Constructed, and by a ton I mean I don't think I've ever seen him played in Constructed, but I have seen him in draft, and I've drafted him myself, and he's been pretty effective at trying to keep a lane clear. Even more so if you can modify his attack and buff him. A lot of the early game weapons only give plus 2 attack. Because it rounds down, that bumps him up to 7. His cleave is only at 3. The real like sweet spot for Sven is getting him to at least 8 attack, because you want him to have 4 cleave. Once you get Sven to 4 cleave, he is going to be doing 8 to whatever's in front of him, but also will clear out melee creeps on the left and on the right of him. He can really help make sure a lane stays nice and paved for you, which is great. Now, Sven's signature card helps with that. 6 mana is a steep cost, but it is a modify a red hero with plus 4 attack. So just playing 1 God Strength on Sven is enough to get him up to 9 attack and that magic 4 cleave number for clearing out melee creeps. So it's a heavy investment at 6 mana. There's certainly a lot more impactful plays that you could do in contested lanes, like a Berserker's Call, for example. But God Strength is good enough and really good on Sven. And in draft, where you're not running into Axe every game, Sven can do an awful lot for you. Like I said, he is very, very good at just whatever lane he's in, trying to keep things under control through, swiping through melee creeps with a machete. And we'll move on. Tidehunter. We're almost to the end, guys. Tidehunter is a very unique red hero, and he's one of my favorite heroes, and I'm trying very desperately to get him to work because I feel like he's just on the cusp of being like viable. So Tidehunter has 2 attack, 1 armor, and 18 health. The 2 attack is what holds him back the most. As I said before, 4 attack is kind of a sweet spot. The good news is Tidehunter jumps to that with any item equip, basically, that's a weapon, but starting the game at 2 is a bit of a bummer. However, the 1 armor means he's only taken 1 damage from a melee creep each round, and the 18 health means he sticks around forever. Tidehunter is still weak to condemn effects like all heroes, but that 18 health means that he can stick around for what feels like forever in a lane. Now, the other reason I really like Tidehunter is he has a fantastic active ability, the kind of active ability that can really swing things in your favor when it comes up and is available. So Tidehunter's active ability is Ravage, has a 4-round cooldown, but it stuns Tidehunter's enemy neighbors this round, and each other enemy has a 50% chance of being stunned. So because it always hits the enemy neighbors, you're probably stunning 2 or 3 things no matter what with the ability. And if they're stunned, if they're heroes, mind you, then your opponent can't use those heroes to play cards. So this is as good as like a Gust from Drow sometimes. And then even if you're like not positioned the way you want to be, you still have a 50% chance of stunning everything else in the lane. I've been in lanes where they have, like 8 creeps and 2 heroes, and this thing high rolled and got like all but 1 creep, and then it is a devastating round for your opponent because you can go wild without, fear of reprisal, at least in that immediacy. Tidehunter, I love the activated ability. I like that he just sticks around forever. Like I said, weak to condemn. The other reason that I'm a big fan of Tidehunter is the signature card. It is 1 mana, and you modify a red hero with +1 armor. So, in truth, modifying a red hero with +1 armor isn't, like, great, but it's not bad. And if you play this, like, on Tidehunter, for example, even just 1 time, that it gets him to that sweet spot of 2 armor, so his 18 health matters even more. But the big thing here is that Kraken Shell gives you initiative. It says get initiative on it. Initiative is a powerful, powerful thing to have in Artifact. It sets up big plays, usually in the next lane, and Tidehunter being able to give you a card in your deck that for 1 mana can let you potentially steal initiative. Like, it's very easy for you to, like, you know, spend 5 out of your 6 mana, and then your opponent's playing things because they think, you know, hey, that it's safe, and they go down to 0, and then they play a get initiative card or something to try to steal it back, and then you can steal it back with Kraken Shell, or you can do the reverse, right? Like, your opponent can play down to 0, and then you can play down to, like, you know, 5 of 6, and then they pass thinking, yay, I get initiative, and then you're like, haha, my last magicka, or mana, excuse me. If I say magicka throughout the video, it's because I play a lot of the Elder Scrolls Legends, and that's what that resource is called. But the point here is that 1 mana is a very cheap cost for trying to steal initiative, and the fact that this also is a modify in order to steal it is great. It's a solid signature card on a hero that sticks around forever and has a fantastic activated ability. The biggest problem is this 2 attack here. So if you can get this up consistently, I think Tidehunter has the potential to be very, very strong. I'm going to keep trying to make him work. I haven't really seen him outside of myself and like one other person played a lot in Constructed. I have played him in Draft. I'm usually pretty satisfied with his performance in Draft as long as I'm playing in a 3 red hero deck. Sometimes in like a 2-3 split where a 2 is the red, or a 2-2-1 split, which is actually pretty common in Draft. Tidehunter doesn't feel as strong because the times you need to take initiative, you might not be able to. But if you are lucky enough to draft something where you've got 3 red heroes and Tidehunter can be one of them in Draft, Tidehunter is fantastic. Alright, Timbersaw. Timbersaw has 4 attack, so again, enough to clear out the melee creeps. That's good. 11 health, nice and hardy. Timbersaw's passive ability is that it has +1 armor for each of its attackers. Now, this is interesting because this doesn't mean enemy neighbors. In fact, I think Timbersaw would be much better if this read enemy neighbors, but it is attackers. So it's only if whatever the enemy unit is targeting Timbersaw that he gets the bonus armor. That matters because there are times where he might have enemy neighbors, but nobody across from Timbersaw, and as such, nobody's targeting him. And that in those scenarios, he has no armor, and if your opponent uses anything that deals direct damage, they will deal the full amount, right? Timbersaw has no armor at that moment. Conversely, if because of the way the arrows flop and roll, if Timbersaw is being targeted by like 3 melee creeps, you know, the 2 enemy neighbors and the one directly across, he'll have an effective 3 armor at that point, and so something like No Accident from Debbie will deal no damage to Timbersaw. It's all based on essentially how many arrows are pointing at Timbersaw at that exact moment. That's how his passive works, just for clarity. I have not seen Timbersaw played a lot in Constructed. I have played him in Draft. I think he's very good in Draft, largely because of this signature ability. 2 mana is a pretty cheap cost to pay. You choose an allied red hero, you deal 2 damage to its enemy neighbors, and give them -2 attack this round. So unlike his passive, where the enemies have to be targeting him, this is just a all enemy neighbors. It doesn't have to be played on Timbersaw, it's any allied red hero, and 2 damage and -2 attack is usually enough to swing that combat in your favor pretty heavily, because they're taking extra damage and your units are taking less. That's really all you could ask for in that scenario. So Timbersaw's good at helping your melee creeps generate pressure. You know, if you've got a Timbersaw and you've got melee creeps on your left and your right, and Timbersaw's across from, you know, some melee creeps, being able to deal each of them 2 extra damage and then reducing their damage from 2 to 0 to allow your melee creeps to take no damage does that. It starts that slow process of snowballing things in your favor. So Whirling Death is solid. Timbersaw's got good enough stats to warrant playing. Like I said, I've played him in Draft. I'm usually pretty okay with taking him in a draft. You know, I wouldn't first pick him, right? But if I end up with a Timber Saw, I'm not disappointed. Last, we have Ursa. Ursa has 7 attack, 10 health, no armor, but 10 health is good enough, nice and hardy. 7 attack is a lot of attack. It's not quite the 8 attack sweet spot, but it's as good as Axe. Does still let you kill a lot of blue heroes and some others. Now, Ursa has a passive ability that says when Ursa deals battle damage to a unit, modify that unit with -1 armor. So, if Ursa starts hitting enemy heroes, they get modified with -1 armor, and that's great for you because that means you deal more damage to those enemy heroes slowly and surely over the rest of the game. So Ursa has the potential to make cards like Zeus, make cards like Luna with her Eclipse be better the same way that Bristleback does with Bristleback's signature ability. The difference is Ursa's comes from a passive and you don't have as much control over it. This is why Bristleback ultimately gets picked and constructed over Ursa. Bristleback also just has better stats. Now, I do think that Ursa's signature card is strong, but Ursa just, you know, for constructed play, for the most part, is outclassed by Bristleback. So Ursa does not see a lot of constructed play outside of, like, mono red decks. I have seen a couple people try to play mono red. I think Ursa makes the cut there. Now, Ursa is definitely good enough for draft, and the signature card here is great in draft. You give a red hero +4 attack and +4 armor this round. This is enough usually to say, I'm going to kill whatever is across from my red hero, because most of your red heroes have solid stats, and my red hero's likely not taking damage. You know, if you use this on like a Legion commander, she jumps up to, you know, 10 attack with 2 retaliate, 5 armor. Yeah, it's just really, really good. This is, you know, 4 is a lot to pay, but this is the kind of combat trick that swings things completely in your favor. I'm going to take a drink now, because apparently my voice is starting to go. I've been filming these while getting over a cold, so yeah. All right, so Enrage, solid card, Ursa, solid hero, not good enough for constructed, but again, if you draft it, you're not feeling too terrible about it in draft. And that's kind of like the MO for most of the red heroes. The problem with red is mostly in the cards, not the heroes. The card pool in red is not filled with the greatest filler. There are some very powerful cards in red. The Stonehall Elite, for example, and you know, even, well, here, I mean, we can look here real quick, right? Like Bronze Legionnaire, Hellbear Cripplers. There are some really strong cards in red, but not necessarily as much like good filler, which again is usually why red is played as like a 2 of in draft. But the problem is almost never the heroes. The heroes are all relatively solid, with the exception, like I said, Mazzy's like not great. Pugna is very situational in terms of my draft. Keef is a basic hero, but pretty much all of the other ones are ones that if I have to play them in draft, I am not upset at playing them. So red heroes, just kind of overall, if you're playing draft, are something to keep an eye on, and just hope that you have enough red cards that you find along the way to support playing that color. Yeah, hopefully, now that we're at the end, this helped you, or at least gave you some more stuff to think about. I apologize about my voice freaking out here at the end of this. Like I said, I'm filming these as I'm kind of getting over a cold, and it's been creeping into the videos. My apologies. I'd love to hear from you guys too, after you've played the game for a little bit. Do you think that some of these are being underutilized or overlooked for reasons? But, you know, that's it. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope to catch you next time.